The moment my granddaughter said it, I felt something shift inside my chest, not pain exactly, more like the second before you realize you've cut yourself, when your body knows before your mind does. I was standing at the kitchen sink, rinsing the dinner dishes, watching the backyard go dark through the window. The days had been getting shorter, and I'd been meaning to fix the porch light for 2 weeks. Little things like that pile up when you're 64 and raising a child on your own, or what amounts to raising a child on your own, even when there's a husband sitting in the next room. My granddaughter had come in quietly, the way she'd been doing a lot lately. Lily is 8 years old and was born with enough personality to fill a concert hall. She used to announce herself when she walked into rooms, not from rudeness, just from sheer energy, like she was always slightly too full of life for her small body to contain. That Lily would slide across the kitchen floor in her socks and grab my hand and demand to know what was for dessert before she'd even taken off her backpack. The Lily who came into the kitchen that Tuesday evening walked in softly and sat down at the table without saying anything. "How was the program today?" I asked, keeping my voice casual, not turning around from the sink. She was quiet for a moment. I heard the zipper on her backpack. "Grandma," she said, "do I have to keep going to Miss Donna's class?" I turned off the faucet. I didn't turn around right away. I stood there with my hands wet and the dish towel on the counter, and I made myself breathe before I turned to look at her. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" I said. Lily was looking at her hands in her lap. "I just don't really like it anymore." The art class. She'd loved that art class 3 months ago. She'd come home with paint on her elbows and little watercolor birds she'd made, holding them up for me like prizes. She had asked to go twice a week instead of once. I had been so glad she'd found something that made her light up again. After everything, after losing her mom and dad, after all of it. "Did something happen with Miss Donna?" I asked, sitting down across from her. "No," she said, too quickly. Then, "I just get really tired there. I don't know why. I always feel sleepy by the time you pick me up." I looked at my granddaughter's face in the kitchen light. There were shadows under her eyes that I had been telling myself were from the time change. I had been telling myself a lot of things. "How long have you been feeling that way?" I said. She shrugged the way 8-year-olds do when they sense a question is heavier than it looks. "I don't know. A while." I reached across the table and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Okay," I said. "We'll figure it out." I kept my voice steady all the way through bath time and bedtime and the 2 chapters of her book she needed to fall asleep. I kept it steady until I heard her breathing go slow and even in the dark, and then I sat in the hallway outside her door for a long time, not moving. "My name is Dorothy. I was an emergency room nurse for 31 years. I know what tired looks like, and I know what medicated looks like, and they do not look the same." I had spent the past month telling myself I was overreacting. My son and his wife died 22 months ago. A highway accident in November. Black ice. No warning. I had flown out to collect Lily from a neighbor's house, this tiny 6-year-old in SpongeBob pajamas who kept asking me where her mommy was, and I had brought her home, and that had been that. My husband Richard and I had become parents again at 62 and 64, and some days it was the most natural thing in the world, and some days I sat in the bathroom with the fan running so nobody would hear me cry. I had attributed every change in Lily to grief. Every nightmare, every quiet spell, every afternoon she fell asleep on the couch at 4:30. Children process loss differently, the grief counselor told us. Give her time, give her space. I had given her time. I had given her space. I had watched her get quieter and more tired for 8 weeks, and I had told myself it was grief. Sitting in that hallway, I understood that I had been wrong. The next morning, I called my friend Carol before Richard was even out of the shower. Carol spent 30 years as a pediatric nurse, retired 2 years before me, and she is the kind of person who answers the phone at 7 in the morning and skips straight past hello. "What's wrong?" she said. I told her about Lily. The fatigue, the quietness, the specific pattern of it worse on Tuesdays and Thursdays, which were the days she attended the after-school enrichment program at the community center. Carol listened without interrupting, which she only does when something is serious. "How long has she been in this program?" Carol asked. "About 10 weeks. And the tiredness started. About 8 weeks ago." Silence. "Bring her to me today," Carol said. "Don't say anything to her. Don't alarm her. Just bring her." I told Richard I was taking Lily for a routine checkup. He was eating toast and reading something on his phone, and he said "sounds good" without looking up, which I noted but filed away, because I had been filing things away for longer than I realized. Carol has a proper exam room set up in a spare bedroom. She volunteers with a free clinic twice a month and keeps the equipment at home. She examined Lily thoroughly while I sat in the corner trying to keep my expression neutral. Lily thought it was an adventure. She asked if she could listen to her own heartbeat. After Carol sent Lily to the kitchen for a glass of juice, she came and stood in the doorway of the exam room and looked at me. "Her heart rate is lower than I'd like for a child her age and activity level," she said. "Her reflexes are slightly sluggish. Her eyes—" She paused. "Dorothy, has anyone been giving her anything? Any supplement, any herbal product, anything you didn't give her yourself?" The room felt very small. "The art class teacher," I said. "She gives the kids a snack. Lily mentioned a special tea once. I stopped. I had thought it was chamomile. I had thought it was sweet and wholesome, and I had not asked a single follow-up question because I was tired and overwhelmed, and I trusted that a woman running a children's program at a community center could be trusted. Carol put her hand on my arm. "I'm not making a diagnosis," she said carefully. "But the presentation, the specific timing, the pattern, the symptoms, this is consistent with a mild sedative. Something herbal, possibly. Valerian, passion flower, something in that family. Enough to make a child drowsy and compliant. Not enough to do permanent harm, but enough," I said. "Enough," Carol agreed. "I drove home in a state I cannot fully describe. There is a kind of anger that lives below the reach of words, below the place where you can still think clearly. I had spent 2 years protecting that child. I had rearranged my entire life around protecting that child, and someone had been. I pulled into the driveway and sat in the car until my hands stopped shaking. I needed to think. I needed to think before I did anything, because whatever I did next had to be right. For Lily. Not for me, not for my anger for her. Richard's car was gone. He'd mentioned something about running errands. I went inside and I stood in the kitchen and I made a list in my head. What I knew, what I didn't know, what I needed to find out. I knew the tiredness was real and medically consistent with a sedative. I knew it happened specifically on program days. I knew the program was run by a woman named Donna, whom I had met twice, once at the registration table and once when I was 5 minutes late to pick up, and found her chatting with Richard in the parking lot while Lily sat on a bench nearby, drowsy, staring at nothing. I had thought at the time that Lily was tired from a full afternoon of activities. I stood in my kitchen and I thought about that parking lot. Richard chatting easily, no awkwardness, no introduction needed, his hand resting on the roof of my car. I went into the bedroom and I picked up Richard's phone from the nightstand. He'd left it behind when he went out. He never leaves his phone behind. It was unlocked. I am not a woman who goes through her husband's phone. I want to be clear about that. In 38 years of marriage, I had never once felt the need, and on some level, some part of me registered that I was about to step through a door I could not step back through. I thought about Lily in her SpongeBob pajamas. I opened his messages. I didn't have to scroll far. The most recent conversation was labeled with a name I recognized. Not saved as a name, saved as an initial. Just D. The way you save something when you don't want your wife to see the name. I read for 4 minutes. My throat closed. My vision went sharp in that specific way it used to in the ER, when everything stopped being personal and became clinical, because clinical was the only way to function. They had been seeing each other for at least 4 months. That much was clear from context. What else was clear? Donna knew who Lily was. There were messages discussing her. Messages about their arrangement, about Richard coming to the community center during program hours when Lily was occupied. Messages about Lily being such a good girl and so easy on Thursdays. One message from Donna, dated 6 weeks ago. "The tea works perfectly. She's so mellow by 3 p.m. We have all the time we need." I put the phone down exactly where I had found it. I went into the bathroom and I turned on the shower and I stood outside it, fully dressed, just letting the sound of the water fill the room. I needed a minute. I allowed myself 1 minute. Then I turned the shower off and I went back to the kitchen and I called Carol. "I found it," I said. "I know what's happening. I know all of it." Carol was quiet for a moment. "How are you?" "I'm fine," I said. which was not even close to true. I need to think about how to do this right. You need to call someone. I will. I am going to. But I need to do something first. Here is what I had learned in 31 years of emergency medicine. Acting on pure emotion in a crisis gets people hurt. You move fast, but you move right. You don't grab the first thing within reach. You take the 3 extra seconds to do it correctly. I needed documentation. I needed something beyond my word against theirs, because I was a 64-year-old woman who had just read her husband's private messages without permission, and I knew exactly how that story could be spun. I spent the next 2 hours building a record. I wrote down everything Lily had said to me verbatim. I wrote down Carol's clinical observations with Carol's help, on the phone, word for word. I noted every date, every program day, every time I had picked up a drowsy child from that parking lot and told myself it was nothing. Then I called the community center's main office, not Donna's cell, not the program line, but the main administrative number, and I spoke to the director. I told her I had concerns about the after-school enrichment program and that I believed a child, possibly multiple children, had been given an undisclosed substance during program hours. I told her I had documentation and a medical professional who had examined my granddaughter and was prepared to make a formal statement. The woman on the other end went very quiet. I need you to document this as a formal complaint, I said. I need a complaint number. She gave me one. Then I called the non-emergency police line and I reported it there too, because I was not about to let anything fall through a crack. I did not call Richard. Lily came home from school, regular school, not the program. It was a Wednesday and she ran inside and told me about a project on the American Revolution and ate an entire sleeve of crackers, and I watched her face while she talked, and something in me that had been clenched very tight began, slowly, to release. She was okay. She was going to be okay. After dinner, after homework, after she was settled, Richard came home. I was sitting at the kitchen table. There was no food out, no TV on, just me, at the table, waiting. He walked in and looked at me, and I watched him understand that something was different. Men who are hiding something develop a very specific kind of alertness, a readiness to manage, to deflect, to smooth things over. I had seen it in the ER on patients who were concealing how they'd gotten hurt. I recognized it now. "Hey," he said, "you eaten?" "Sit down, Richard." He sat. I told him what I knew. Not everything, not yet, but enough. I told him that Lily had been experiencing symptoms consistent with a mild sedative. I told him that a pediatric nurse had examined her and documented her findings. I told him that I had looked at his phone. He started to speak. I held up my hand. "I don't want explanations tonight," I said. "I want you to take what you need for a week and stay with your brother. We will talk when I am ready to talk. If you argue with me about this, I will call the police tonight instead of giving them until tomorrow morning." He stared at me. "Our granddaughter," I said. "Whatever else you have done, whatever choices you made for yourself, she is 8 years old. She lost her parents. And someone drugged her so that you and that woman could have time together." I had kept my voice steady through all of it. It broke on that last sentence. Richard left that night. He did not argue. The following morning, 2 things happened. The community center director called me to say that Donna had been suspended pending an internal review, and that they had pulled the program's supply closet and found, among other things, a large container of a commercial herbal sleep blend, the kind marketed for adults with insomnia, and a set of small paper cups that had been rinsed out but not discarded. And a detective from the Family Crimes Unit called me and asked if I could come in with my documentation. I went in that afternoon. I brought Carol's written assessment. I brought my timeline. I brought nothing else, no accusations beyond what I could verify, no emotion I couldn't support with fact. I had been an ER nurse for 31 years. I knew how to present a case. The investigation took 6 weeks. During that time, I learned that Lily had not been the only child. There were 3 others in the program, all from the Tuesday-Thursday group, whose parents had noticed increased fatigue and attributed it to the fall season, to schoolwork, to growth spurts, to everything except what it actually was. Donna was charged with endangering the welfare of a child, 4 counts. The investigation into what Richard had or hadn't known about the drugging continued separately, and I was asked not to discuss that part publicly, so I won't. What I will say is that there is a difference between being guilty of a terrible marriage and being guilty of knowing a child was being harmed, and I had to sit with that complexity for a long time. Some things are not simple. I have learned, late in life, not to need them to be. The divorce was not angry, which surprised me and I think surprised Richard too. We were two people who had built a life together and then allowed it to come apart quietly over years of distraction and accommodation, and the affair was the proof of that failure, not the cause of it. I grieved the marriage. I did not, in the end, hate the man. Hate takes energy I didn't have and wasn't willing to spend. What I spent my energy on was Lily. We started seeing a family therapist in January, a woman who specializes in childhood trauma, who came recommended by Carol's network. Lily knows, in age-appropriate terms, that Miss Donna did something that wasn't safe, and that's why Miss Donna had to stop running the program. She knows that I found out and I made sure she was safe. She knows I will always make sure she is safe. She started a new art class in February at a studio 2 towns over. The teacher there is a 60-year-old woman named Barbara who has been teaching children's art for 20 years, whose references I checked personally, whose background I verified without embarrassment, because I am done being embarrassed about being thorough. Last month, Lily brought home a watercolor painting of a yellow dog that looked nothing like a dog and everything like joy. She held it up and told me its name was Corn Dog, and I said that was an excellent name, and I put it on the refrigerator with 2 magnets, and then I went into the living room and I sat down and I breathed. I think about the version of me from 9 months ago, the one who chalked everything up to grief, who told herself she was overreacting, who handed her granddaughter over to a community program twice a week without asking nearly enough questions. I don't beat that woman up. She was exhausted, and she was doing her best, and she was wrong. Both things are true. I think about the moment Lily sat down at the kitchen table and said, quietly, "Do I have to keep going?" Children tell us things. They tell us in the ways that are available to them, which are not always the ways we're listening for. They don't always have words for what's wrong. They have small requests, small withdrawals, small changes in the way they walk into a room. My granddaughter walked into my kitchen one Tuesday evening with shadows under her eyes and 4 words, and I am so grateful I turned off the faucet. I am so grateful I turned around. There were nights, in the middle of all of it, when I lay awake and thought about how close I had come to not seeing it, how many more weeks I might have filed it away, how the most dangerous word in a grandmother's vocabulary might not be any particular thing she says, it might be the things she tells herself are fine. Lily slept in my bed for 3 weeks after everything came out. Not because she was scared, exactly, but because she wanted to be close, and I wanted her close. And sometimes after 31 years of clinical efficiency, it turns out what you need is the simple warmth of a child's cold feet against your ankles at 2 in the morning. She's back in her own room now. She's back to sliding across the kitchen floor in her socks. She argued with me last week about whether pancakes or waffles are objectively superior, and she had a lot of opinions and she delivered them with great volume, and I sat there watching her and I thought, there you are. There is the girl I've been waiting for. She is going to be fine. I know this with the certainty I used to reserve for things I could measure: blood pressure, heart rate, oxygen saturation. Some things you just know. Some knowledge lives below the instruments. I tell people, when they ask, that the hardest part was not the confrontation, or the divorce, or the police interviews, or even the 6 weeks of uncertainty during the investigation. The hardest part was the 2 months before any of it, when something in me already knew and I kept choosing not to hear it. Trust what you know. Trust your children when they speak in the only language available to them. Trust yourself before you trust your own need for things to be okay. We are okay now, my granddaughter and I. We are more than okay. We had waffles this morning and she beat me at Go Fish twice, and she has a school project due Thursday that she has not started, which I'm told is a rite of childhood, and I have exactly enough energy to help her with it tonight and be annoyed about it and love her completely through the annoyance. That is everything. That is all of it. That is enough.